The priest didn't even finish the vows before everything came crashing down. The music had just faded. The guests, dressed in designer suits and flowing dresses, sat still under the California sun, their eyes fixed on the altar where Alyssa Martin stood, radiant in a custom Vera Wang gown, holding the hand of her soon-to-be husband, Daniel Reyes. Cameras flashed. Drones hovered above for aerial shots, and the celebrity chef's hors d'oeuvres had already gone viral on Instagram. It was the wedding of the year. Everything was perfect. Until it wasn't. Charles Martin, Alyssa's father and one of America's most influential tech millionaires, sat on the front row, his fingers gripping the arms of his seat. His face betrayed no emotion, but inside, a war was raging. For months, he had smiled through the rehearsals, posed for family photos, and nodded during tastings. But behind the scenes, he had been digging, searching, trying to find what his gut refused to ignore. And today, just moments before the ceremony, the final confirmation had come in, via a message that lit up his phone like a siren in the dark. Alyssa had no idea. She looked out into the crowd with sparkling eyes, her heart pounding with excitement. Her groom, Daniel, looked confident, almost too confident. He squeezed her hand, leaned close, and whispered, "We're almost there, baby." She smiled, unaware of the storm brewing in her father's chest. The priest opened his book, cleared his throat, and began. "We are gathered here today in the presence of God and these witnesses to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Charles didn't blink. His hand moved slowly to his lapel, adjusting the boutonniere he didn't even remember pinning on. His other hand rested on his phone, the message glowing on the screen. Confirmed. His married, pregnant wife in Dallas. Details attached. Charles stood up, not angrily, not dramatically, just decisively, like a man who knew the cost of silence. Alyssa didn't notice at first. She was lost in the ceremony, lost in the illusion. But when he took his first step forward, the crowd stirred, phones lowered, conversations paused. Daniel's eyes flicked to his left, and his smile faltered. "Wait," he muttered under his breath. "What is he doing?" The priest looked up, confused. Charles raised his hand. "I'm sorry, but this wedding," his voice was steady, clear, and piercing through the silence, "cannot go on." Gasps echoed through the garden. The string quartet stopped playing. The priest stumbled over his words. Alyssa's face turned pale. "Dad?" "I said this wedding is over," Charles repeated. The chaos that followed felt like slow motion. The bridal party froze. Bridesmaids exchanged panicked glances. The maid of honor, Alyssa's best friend Tasha, mouthed, "What the hell?" Daniel let go of Alyssa's hand and turned to Charles, his face stiffening. "With all due respect, sir, this is not the time or place." "It's exactly the time," Charles cut in. "You don't deserve to be standing here." Alyssa's voice cracked. "Dad, what are you talking about?" "I didn't want it to come to this," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I prayed I wouldn't have to do this publicly, but you wouldn't listen. You insisted he was the one. And so, I had to find out the truth myself." "Charles, please," Daniel tried again, voice rising. "Let's talk in private." Charles held up his phone. "Is it true that you're already married?" Dead silence. "What?" Alyssa whispered. Charles turned the screen toward her. A marriage license. Daniel Reyes and a woman named Claudia Simmons. Dated 4 years ago. Filed in Dallas County. Still active. "Is that real?" one of the groomsmen blurted out. Daniel's lips moved, but no sound came. Alyssa reached for the phone with shaking hands. This can't be real." "There's more," Charles continued. "This Claudia woman, she's 7 months pregnant. With your child." "No," Daniel stammered. "No, it's not what you think. That marriage wasn't real. It was for legal purposes. We've been separated for years. But you still send her money monthly. I have the wire transfers." Alyssa's knees buckled. Tasha grabbed her arm to steady her. The crowd was frozen, torn between pity and fascination. Phones were out. People were filming. A trending disaster was unfolding live. Daniel lunged toward Alyssa. "Listen to me, okay? It's not what is making it sound like. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to ruin this. But it's over between us. I love you." "Don't," Alyssa whispered, stepping back. "Don't touch me." "I told you," Charles said, softer now. "I told you something about him didn't sit right. But you wouldn't listen." Alyssa stared at Daniel, eyes brimming with tears. "You said you were divorced. You said I was your world. You promised me honesty. I was protecting you from the truth." Her voice cracked. Her dress, now dirty at the hem, clung to her like a ghost of a dream. She turned away, covering her face, breath shallow. Daniel tried one last time. "Alyssa, please, we can fix this." "No," she said, her voice steadier now. "You lied. You used me. You humiliated me in front of everyone I love." She turned to her father. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I tried," Charles said, "but you were in love. And sometimes, love blinds people. I knew that if I didn't stop it here and now, you would wake up tomorrow married to a fraud." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "And I would have spent the rest of my life paying for a mistake I made in a white dress." She looked out at the crowd, still silent and stunned. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "It's over." And just like that, the ceremony ended. Not with a kiss, not with applause, but with truth. As Charles stepped forward and wrapped his arm around his daughter, Daniel was left standing alone at the altar, sweating, exposed, and humiliated. The guests slowly began to rise, unsure whether to stay or leave. Alyssa walked away from the altar, her head held high, her heart shattered, but her dignity intact. And her father, the man she once thought was overprotective, had just saved her from the worst mistake of her life. The silence that followed Alyssa's exit from the altar lingered like fog over the lavish garden. Guests stood frozen, unsure if they should offer sympathy or stay out of it altogether. Some whispered. Some turned off their phones. Others kept recording. This wasn't just a ruined ceremony. It was a televised train wreck unraveling in real time. Daniel remained on the platform, breathing heavily, his tuxedo now feeling more like a straitjacket. His carefully rehearsed charm had cracked, and the look in his eyes revealed something new, desperation. He slowly descended the steps from the altar, but no one approached him. Even the groomsmen stood back, their silence louder than any accusation. Alyssa disappeared into the bridal suite, slamming the door behind her. Her hands trembled as she tore off her veil, her reflection in the mirror looking nothing like the woman she was at mourning. The eyeliner had smudged from crying. Her lip gloss was ruined. And the wedding dress, the dress she had dreamed of since she was a teenager, felt like a lie she'd been sewn into. Tasha barged in moments later. "Alyssa." She didn't tone. "Did you know?" "No. I swear I didn't. I didn't even like the guy, but I didn't know this." Alyssa sat down, clutching the phone her father had handed her. She stared at the marriage certificate, the wire transfers, the photos of Daniel and the pregnant woman smiling in front of a modest suburban house in Texas. It didn't look photoshopped. It looked real. Too real. "How could I have missed this?" she whispered. Tasha didn't answer. She just stood there, helpless, watching her best friend unravel. Meanwhile, outside, Charles faced a press that had begun to gather near the main gate. His assistant tried to usher him away, but he waved them off. "My priority is my daughter," he told a reporter firmly. "And while this may seem dramatic to some of you, I'd rather deal with headlines and watch her marry a man who lied to her face." Daniel, escorted out by venue security, wasn't going quietly. He kept shouting about misunderstandings, legal separation, and not meaning to hurt anyone. But nobody was listening. The mask had fallen. The charm had faded. And all that was left was a man exposed. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the flowers had started to wilt, Alyssa sat alone on the edge of her bed in her suite. Still in the dress, still dazed, Charles knocked once and entered. "Can I sit?" he asked gently. She nodded, her voice gone. He sat beside her, carefully, the air between them filled with things neither of them knew how to say. "I should have told you sooner," he began. "I didn't want to ruin your big day, but I also knew I couldn't stay silent." Alyssa nodded slowly, still staring at the floor. "I thought you were just being overprotective. I thought maybe you were jealous, or trying to control me like when I was 16. I get it, he said. I've made mistakes. I was hard on you when you were younger. I missed a lot of your milestones building my company. I can't take that back. But this wasn't about control. This was about protection. She finally looked up at him. Her eyes were raw. You saved me, Dad, from a lifetime of lies. He hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket again and pulled out a small envelope. There's something else. She looked at it suspiciously. More secrets? No, just truth. Inside was a photo. Charles, 25 years younger, standing in front of a courthouse in Las Vegas. Next to him, a young woman holding a baby. Alyssa blinked in shock. That's me. Yes, he said. And that woman, she was my first wife. We got married too fast. I thought I was in love, but I didn't see the red flags. She cheated, drained my bank account, disappeared, left you with me when you were only a few months old. Alyssa clutched the photo. That's why I panicked when you told me about Daniel, he said, because I saw the same pattern, the same charm, the same deflection, and I wasn't about to watch history repeat itself. She breathed out slowly. Why didn't you ever tell me? I wanted to protect you from the ugliness. I thought if I gave you a better life, you wouldn't need to know how bad things were. But maybe I should have shared my mistake sooner. She reached over and placed a hand on his. I'm sorry for pushing you away. He squeezed it gently. I'm just glad I still had time to reach you. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, the crew was already packing up the decorations. The fairy tale was over. Alyssa stood and slowly unzipped her dress. She let it fall to the floor. No hesitation. No second thoughts. I want to burn it, she muttered. Charles raised an eyebrow. The dress? All of it, she said, voice strengthening. The wedding, the lies, the photos, every trace of him. He smiled faintly. I know a guy who owns a secure document shredding company. She laughed. A real laugh. For the first time that day, that night, she posted a single photo to Instagram, her hand holding the marriage certificate she never signed, over a roaring fire pit. The caption read, better to be heartbroken now than broken for life. Thank you, Dad. The post exploded with support. Celebrities commented. Friends texted. Strangers flooded her DMs with stories of their own ruined weddings, failed engagements, and last-minute revelations. What should have been the worst day of her life slowly became something else, something redemptive. She realized how many people had lived through heartbreaks they never talked about. How many had ignored red flags for the sake of love. How many wished someone had stopped them at the altar. The next day, Alyssa told her father she was going away for a while. Just a break. To think. To heal. To figure out who I am now. He nodded. Take all the time you need. Before she left, he handed her a black journal. Write it all down, he said, so you never forget what you learned. And she did. She wrote about love, about manipulation, about illusion and instinct, about how even the smartest people can be deceived by charm, and about the value of having someone who loves you enough to ruin your perfect day in order to protect your future. What Alyssa didn't know yet was that her story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. The pain was still there, but so was the truth. And truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is what sets you free. Alyssa returned to New York 3 weeks later. Her face was calmer, her eyes more focused, and her energy different. Something had shifted in her. The whirlwind wedding disaster had left a scar, yes, but it also carved out a part of her she hadn't accessed in years, her sense of self. The world had moved on from the viral fiasco, but fragments of the story still lingered on gossip sites and social media. Most headlines had faded, but occasionally a TikTok video would resurface showing the exact moment her father stood up at the ceremony. People had their opinions. Some praised Charles as protective father. Others thought he overstepped. But Alyssa wasn't concerned with the noise anymore. She had bigger things on her mind. The apartment felt both familiar and foreign when she walked in. Her wedding gifts were still stacked in the corner. She hadn't touched them since the day she left. She stared at the boxes with names engraved in gold, Mr. and Mrs. Reyes, and without hesitation, began tossing them into black trash bags. She didn't cry this time. She didn't scream. She just kept moving. The next morning, she opened her laptop and stared at a blank document. She had been writing in her father's gifted journal for weeks during her break. The entries were raw, unfiltered, memories of Daniel's gaslighting, her own doubts, her fear of confrontation, the way she smiled through discomfort because she didn't want to be labeled dramatic. She read through them all again, then looked up at the screen and typed the words, "Blind love, how I almost married a stranger." It wasn't a blog post. It wasn't an article. It was the start of something more. A platform, a space for women to share stories, find strength, and speak the truths they were often shamed into hiding. Alyssa had spent years building a name in the fashion industry. She was a respected editor, a creative consultant. But for the first time in her life, she wanted to use her voice for something deeper than trends and seasonal collections. Within days, she launched a podcast and an Instagram page under the name Blind Love. The first episode featured her own story, recorded alone in her closet, her voice cracking and healing in real time. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. "I was standing at the altar with a man I didn't truly know," she said. "And I would have married him if my father hadn't loved me enough to ruin everything." The response was overwhelming. Thousands of women messaged her. Some shared similar experiences. Others admitted they were currently ignoring the very red flag she described. The episode went viral in less than a week. She brought on guests, therapists, survivors, relationship experts. The podcast wasn't about shaming anyone. It was about clarity, about prevention, about healing out loud. Meanwhile, Daniel's life was unraveling in the shadows. After Alyssa's father exposed the truth, his other wife in Dallas came forward publicly. Her name was Claudia, and she wasn't just a green card situation. She had been living with Daniel up until just 3 months before the wedding. She even had photos of him kissing her belly at her baby shower. Alyssa didn't comment on any of it. She didn't have to. The truth was speaking for itself. Daniel was eventually arrested for fraud and bigamy. It turned out Alyssa wasn't his only target. Another woman in Chicago had already filed a complaint about a similar scam: false business investments, emotional manipulation, promises of marriage. Daniel had perfected the role of a romantic conman, and now it was catching up to him. Charles called Alyssa the morning the news broke. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm not surprised," she said. "I just hope every woman he hurt sees justice." Charles hesitated. "I'm proud of you, you know." "For what?" "For not letting it destroy you. For using it to build something." She smiled. "It still hurts, just in quieter ways now." In late spring, Alyssa was invited to speak at a women's empowerment summit in Chicago. It was her first time on stage since the wedding. She wore a sleek black pantsuit, no wedding ring, no makeup except for a bold red lip. She stood in front of 400 women and told them how silence almost cost her everything. She spoke about the little lies that get overlooked in the name of love. The red flags we paint green because we're afraid of starting over. The way society often punishes women for saying no, for being too picky, for walking away. "But I'd rather be alone," she said to the room, her voice clear and strong, "than spend my life pretending not to notice I'm being lied to." The applause was deafening. That night, she met a woman named Marissa backstage, mid-30s, 2 kids, divorced. Marissa had listened to Blind Love during a night of insomnia and said it gave her the courage to cancel her wedding just a week before it was set to happen. "I saw myself in your story," she said, crying. "You gave me permission to trust my instincts." Alyssa hugged her tightly. This was worth it. The pain, the embarrassment, the headlines. It was all leading to something bigger than her. She didn't just heal, she helped others do the same. As the weeks passed, she moved forward. The wedding dress was donated to a charity that offered gowns to women escaping abusive relationships. The bridal suite reservation at the resort, she converted it into a weekend retreat for women who wanted to unplug and heal. One day, while browsing through a podcast inbox, she saw an email from someone unexpected. Subject line: forgiveness. It was Daniel. She stared at the screen for several minutes before clicking. His message was long, apologetic, full of reflection. He claimed therapy had forced him to face the wreckage he had caused. He didn't ask to get back together. He didn't even defend his actions. He simply wrote, "If nothing else, I hope you'll know I regret hurting you. And I hope you'll let go of the weight I added to your life. You didn't deserve that." Alyssa sat with it, thought about replying, then closed the laptop without responding. Sometimes, silence is a closure. On the anniversary of what would have been her wedding day, she hosted a live episode titled "Thank You, Dad." She spoke candidly about how a father's love, even when inconvenient, can be life-saving. How many fathers would risk embarrassment, media backlash, and the wrath of their own daughter just to keep her from making the biggest mistake of her life? She asked. Charles was in the front row, holding back tears. It was the first time she had publicly acknowledged his actions not as an interruption, but as an act of love. She ended the episode with a line that would later go viral across social media. "He didn't ruin my wedding. He saved my future." The next morning, Charles sent her flowers, not roses, but her favorite, white tulips. The card read, "Thank you for letting me protect you. Love, Dad." By the end of that year, Blind Love was nominated for multiple awards. Alyssa had no plans of slowing down. She'd built a brand, yes, but more importantly, she'd built a legacy. She never stopped believing in love. But now, she believed in earned love. Love that was honest, transparent, kind, real, and if it ever came again, she'd be ready. Not because she was desperate for it, but because she'd already learned how to live without lies. Her story didn't end at the altar. It began there. And to the millions of women listening around the world, Alyssa Martin became more than just a girl whose wedding went viral. She became the woman who stood back up, who spoke up, who woke up, and never looked back.